second batch of preseason games starting tomorrow, and a lot of changes on the horizon.
Yeah, it feels like there's just constant change inside that Browns quarterback room because the next person up just keeps getting hurt. Shedeur Sanders got the start last week because everybody else got hurt. Well, he is unlikely to play this week in Philadelphia with an oblique strain. This after accounting for over 150 total yards and throwing 2 touchdowns in his preseason debut. That means Dillon Gabriel, who's dealing with a hamstring injury that kept him out of that game, is likely going to start Saturday in Philadelphia. As we bring in Bryant McFadden, our 2-time Super Bowl champ. B-Max, so much is made by people like us about the performance in preseason games. Is it more important what goes on in camp or in a preseason game for rookie quarterbacks like this trying to move their way up the depth chart?
It's a combination of both. For a young player that is trying to cement himself into the organization, you have to show consistency in practices that will lead to consistencies in the game opportunities in the preseason play. And that's what we were hearing from a healthy Shedeur Sanders in terms of practices, looking really, really good, and that played to a nice day a week ago against the Carolina Panthers. And because of the injuries, as you alluded to, Chris, it gave him that opportunity. Now, Dillon Gabriel gets an opportunity to benefit from the same thing that Shedeur Sanders benefited from last week, and starting because Shedeur Sanders is healthy. So if you're Kevin Stefanski, clearly you know who your day one starter is. That's Joe Flacco, veteran Joe Flacco. But now it's about being able to establish who is behind Joe Flacco, who is deserving of being number 2, number 3 on the depth chart. Because as we saw it, once the offseason was rolling, the depth chart consists of Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. But there was a shakeup in terms of injuries that led to an opportunity for Shedeur Sanders. So now if you're Dillon Gabriel, you want to showcase to this organization, yeah, I know you guys were high on what Shedeur Sanders has done, but don't forget about me because I still can play as well.
And Snoop Huntley was the guy who got the backup duty in that first game. We'll see what happens on Saturday afternoon. Also Saturday afternoon, Vikings taking on the Patriots. They are having joint practices this week ahead of that game. You have 2 quarterbacks who were taken in the first round last year. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy had a much different year than Drake Maye because he didn't get to play due to injury. But projecting ahead to this season, McCarthy, with all those weapons at his disposal in Minnesota, or Drake Maye with a team in New England that's ascending, which one of those quarterbacks do you believe has the better year?
I believe it to be Drake Maye, and it's simple, Chris. Drake Maye played his rookie year. Yes, this is essentially JJ's second year, but this is actually his first year because he didn't play one meaningful snap a year ago in the regular season for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Kevin O'Connell has really shown the ability to have success with whoever has been at the quarterback position, which should help J.J. McCarthy. But I got to go with Drake Maye because even if you look at what Drake Maye did throughout his rookie campaign, especially towards the latter moments of the season, he started really to get comfortable and find his groove. When you look at the resources they've added to their offense, trying to become better on the offensive line, giving him more skilled players to surround him, I think Drake Maye should definitely continue to take steps in the right direction. So I'll go with Drake Maye just solely because he played his rookie year and J.J. didn't.
All right, moving to another team in the NFC North, a division that had 3 different teams win 11-plus games last year. The Packers were one of those teams. They're facing the Colts this Saturday. You have the Jordan Love injury. He's still not back at practice. He's not going to play this week, but it sounds like he might be back soon. Here's Matt LaFleur today.
Surgery went well, and he's in great spirits, and he's here with us. So, yeah, now it's just about putting in the work to get the thumb rehab.
Can you start throwing right away, or like pointers?
I wouldn't say right away, but we anticipate there'll be some sort of participation next week.
All right, so it sounds like he's on his way back as early as next week, at least participating at camp. But given the injury issues last year, and he had a handful of them that kept him out of a few games and hampered him in others, how concerning is this happening before the season even begins?
Not concerned at all. The injuries a year ago were totally different than what he's dealing with now. Remember, the first injury happened in week 1 in Brazil against the Philadelphia Eagles at the end of the ball game where he kind of got rolled up on, I think it was his knee, and he never really got out of that injury. That kind of hindered him throughout the entire year. That led to other injuries to his lower extremities. So this is night and day compared to what he dealt with a year ago. Clearly, Matt LaFleur is not concerned. There's no reason to even hit the panic button at all. I really believe if they had to play a game in a week or so, he should be ready to go. But when you talk about having a finger issue compared to a knee, a groin, or something like that, it's not the same.
All right, no NFL games tonight like we had last Thursday. We have 2 games on Friday and then a full slate Saturday and Sunday. Let's get to what happened today from the Associated Press, which was interesting. We had the AP poll released earlier, but the Associated Press released their all-time All-America team, and the first-team quarterback was a guy who was far from a prototypical quarterback. It was Tim Tebow. Now, he was a Heisman winner. He's a 2-time national champ, a great team leader, but B-Mac, top quarterback of all time, in your opinion?
Now, it's all about how did they assess this roster, right, Chris? Because if you're talking about overall collegiate stats, when you look at Tim Tebow being at Florida 4 years, playing 3 years of really good football, to say the least, he was able to accumulate outstanding collegiate numbers. So if that is the premise in assembling this team, it makes sense. But when you look at Tim Tebow, even going back to that, Heisman campaign, I think it was 2007, he had unbelievable numbers. But I still would say this, I don't think Tim Tebow has had the single best SEC season amongst all SEC quarterbacks all time, in my opinion. So it's all about how they have assembled this roster. You can't knock all of the numbers he has accumulated throughout his collegiate career. But that would be my question to the committee. Are you talking about all time in terms of their entire collegiate career, or you're talking about best year? Because if you look at Tim Tebow's best year compared to some other SEC quarterbacks, I'm not talking about the overall spectrum. I'm just keeping it in the SEC. I would take Joe Burrow single season year over Tim Tebow. I would take Cam Newton single season year over that 2007 Tim Tebow season when he won the Heisman, when he threw for 30-plus touchdowns and ran for another 20-plus. In my opinion, when you look at what Tim Tebow did, when you look at what Cam Newton did and Joe Burrow did, I would take easily those 2 guys over Tim Tebow if we're talking about single best season ever in college football.
So you would take SEC quarterbacks even ahead of Tebow. I don't know. I feel like he's just not. He's not what you think of when you think of a quarterback. I mean, he wasn't just slinging it around the yard.
Well, what I did was, Chris, I just kind of kept it in the small spectrum of the SEC in terms of single best season, right? So when Tim Tebow won the Heisman in 2007, he had gaudy numbers, like 30-plus passing touchdowns, 20-plus rushing touchdowns, right? But they were 9-4. They were 9-4. I think they finished, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, I think they finished 3rd in the SEC East behind Tennessee and Georgia. 9-4. What Joe Burrow did, that championship run, where he threw for like 60 touchdowns, completed over 70% of his passes, guess what they did? They hoist the national championship. And then when you look at what Cam Newton did, who had similar numbers to that 2007 Tim Tebow season that I highlighted, he did everything Tim Tebow did, plus more. Guess what he did? They were flawless. They won a championship. And oh, by the way, that offense that Cam Newton was a part of, you didn't see a lot of pros surrounding him. Hey, on the defensive side, outside of Nick Furley that I can think of and maybe Josh Bynes, you didn't have a lot of pros on the defensive side as well. So that's why I'm just kind of keeping it in that small spectrum in terms of SEC play, because best single season, I feel like there are other guys that have had better years than Tim Tebow. But when you look at the overall landscape, the landscape of things, it's hard to not say Tim Tebow is not one of the best to ever do it when you look at his overall collegiate career from top.